everybody. We are in Second Advent, and the text is Isaiah 40. You're probably very familiar, and spoiler alert for those of you who will stay for second worship services. We have a great hymn prepared by our music director. I mean, he didn't write the music, but it's a great hymn. Yeah, great. Plays.
From the Messiah. Comforting.
Spoiler alert, I'm not going to tell you. Come and find out, exactly. So, Isaiah 40. So, it is important to understand what's going on right now. We start with very famous phrase, comfort, comfort my people, says your God. Okay? And yeah, and those of you who are into Handel, I understand it immediately rings a bell, you know. Okay, that's what Lutheran background makes, you know. Who of you remembers my sermons, let's say a month ago? Nobody. But and it's good, you know. You don't have to memorize them. I don't feel offended, you know. Don't worry about it. But, seriously speaking, our hymnody, the people who wrote hymns, the melody, tunes, and the words, that's what basically, you know, stuck in the brain. And that's why, after a serious consideration, we decided, me and Greg, you know, that we will go through Luther's Mass, through the Advent, because many pieces, like, let's say, the Creed, we will sing the Creed, so you can sing it, you can remember it by singing it. And there are some other pieces that we will sing. There is this Kyrie eleison, what, you know, Lord have mercy. You know, Kyrie is Lord, eleison is, so when you will sing it, you will understand. Eleison is have mercy. And there are great words. So comfort my people. What I'm saying, why it is important in the text. The word the form of the word, not to puzzle your brains with the Hebrew stuff and all of that, but the form of the word in this form appears in two other places, and therefore we kind of need to think about a theme which is not obvious here in the text. It's good that you have Bibles either in printed or digital form with you. This is awesome, and I said, you know, so you listen to my sermons. That's kind of cool. Because I said last Sunday, you might want to start bringing your Bibles with you, because we will jump back and forth. So if we will go back to the very beginning, if we'll go to Genesis 24. In Genesis 24, we have a story how Father Abraham sends his servant with lots of gifts, like gifts and gifts, camels and camels, to his brother to look for the wife for his son Isaac. And this is like really awesome story. And we have parallels from this story in ancient Near East literature. So what we have here is basically can be, I don't want to say proven, because Bible does not need a proof, but it can be supported or illustrated from other texts which are not in the Bible, how marriage arrangement was done in the Near East. And that's exactly, you know, there is a guy who comes with gifts. He offers gifts, first of all, to father, and then father usually actually shifts the gears and gives the right to discuss with to brother. Okay? Side note. Those of you who are who thought that Abraham and his son Isaac are jerks when they set up that this is not my wife, this is my sister. Actually, the whole idea is, why do they call themselves brothers? Because if you want to have some kind of relationship with a woman in that culture, you need to negotiate with brothers. So they were just buying time. Okay? So that's a little bit more complicated, and maybe someday we'll talk about that, but for now, the point is, Abraham sends a guy with lots of gifts, and interestingly enough, usually after this gift exchange happens, then they stay over there for a while, and then, you know, whoever is the gift bringer, he takes the bride and he brings it to the house of the man. Here, when Laban says, Rebecca, what do you think? Do you want to go? Interestingly enough, she says, yeah, I'm ready. Bye. So, no goodbye party, no going away. I mean, nothing. Just, she jumps on, you know, on whatever camel or whatever that was, and, you know, rides off. So, I don't know what was going on between them, but she's so brave. Now she comes, she became the wife, and at the very end of chapter 24, in the very last verse, then Isaac brought her into the tent of Sarah, his mother. By that time, Sarah died, okay? And took Rebekah, and she became his wife, and he loved her. So Isaac was comforted after mother's death, okay? So this word comfort, there will be one more example, and I will show it just in a second. But what I'm going to, the word comfort itself, it's not necessarily when somebody feels, I don't know, disappointed. It's very closely connected with death. Okay? One more example, same Genesis, but chapter 38. In chapter 38, the whole chapter is devoted to Judah after they brothers, sold Joseph into slavery. So we have kind of like an interlusion, you know, we have the story of Joseph, and in that narrative we have insertion. It doesn't mean that somebody else, thousands of years later, inserted that story. No. Whoever wrote the story was just very good and crafty in a good sense of the word writer. So they inserted it here, and that's the chapter 38 that talks about Judah. And what happens is, he was married, he got married, he got 3 kids, and his wife died. Then some time passed, and verse 12, now 38:12. In the course of time, the wife of Judah, Shua's daughter, died. When Judah was comforted, he went up to Timnah to his shepherd shears and so on and so forth. He and his friend. So she died. We don't know why. Died. Okay. Stuff happens. But there was another period of time when he was comforted. So only when he was comforted, he was able to go back to his business. Okay. We don't know what he was doing in between, but there was a period when he needed to be comforted. Now, if we'll jump back to Isaiah, when we see this double comfort my people, so it is possibly a note toward that there was a death experience, and now people of Israel, people of Judah actually, can be comforted. They can go through, so it's like their bottom experience, something that they hit rock bottom, and now they can go up. Okay? The question is, what happened here? Actually, so if this is chapter 40, what happened here is the whole story of King Hezekiah. And King Hezekiah, especially, we're not going to go through everything, but what happened is, if you remember our timeline, and I'm not going to draw it, you probably know it by heart by now, okay? What happened in 722? No. Destruction of Jerusalem happened in 586. It was his ministry, but something else was destroyed. What was destroyed in 722?
Temple.
You guys are like Samaria, okay, northern kingdom. But the guys who assaulted northern kingdom, Assyrians, not Syrians, it's Assyrians. That's the guys with the capital in Nineveh. Okay, not in Damascus. Damascus is Syria. Assyria is Nineveh. That's the guys who were converted, actually, by whom? What's the name of the guy who converted Nineveh?
Jonah.
Jonah, yes. One of our kids from youth group, sure. Son of David can join. He went and converted everybody, yeah. But seriously speaking, Jonah went there, really converted them in some way. Let's put it this way. That's why when they were done with Samaria, with northern kingdom, they actually sent their troops down south toward Jerusalem, assaulted Jerusalem, and if you want to go home and reread this whole story, the commander-in-chief, not the emperor, but commander-in-chief, when he comes to Jerusalem, to the walls of Jerusalem, he speaks to them in Hebrew. And the guys on the wall says, don't speak in Hebrew because people will understand you. Speak to us in Aramaic because then we can reinterpret to our guys and they will not be paralyzed in fear. He said, no. The Lord, Yahweh, he says actually the name, Yahweh, your God, sent me here, so you guys are going to be punished. Okay? So what happens is in chapter 37, as soon as, verse 1, as soon as King Hezekiah heard it, he tore his clothes and covered himself with sackcloth and went into the house of the Lord. And he said, Eliakim, who was over the household, and Shebna, the secretary and senior priest, covered with sackcloth to the prophet Isaiah, the son of Amos. So when you cover yourself with sackcloth, what's a sackcloth? That's a fabric that you use to wrap around dead bodies. Okay, that's how you bury. And when you put ashes on your body, on your head, you kind of symbolically present yourself below the ground level. You bury yourself. You die. Okay? Then after that, what happens is, so the troops retreat, but he got sick. And then we have this beautiful prayer that he prays. Okay, verse 14. So Hezekiah received the letter from the hand of the messenger and read it. And Hezekiah went up to the house of the Lord and spread it before the Lord. And Hezekiah prayed to God, O Lord of hosts, God of Israel, enthroned above the cherubim. You are the God, you are alone, you are kingdoms of all the kingdoms on the earth, and you make heaven and earth. Incline your ear and hear. Open your eyes, O Lord, and see. And hear all the words of Sennacherib, which he has sent to mock living God. Truly, O Lord, the king of Assyria, have laid waste of all the nations and their lands, and have cast their gods into the fire. And verse 26. So now, O Lord, our God, save us from his hand, and that all the kingdoms of the earth may know that you alone are the Lord. So he prays for that. So he goes through this transformative life and death experience. And then, even worse, he personally got sick. And that's chapter 38. In those days, Hezekiah became sick and was at the point of death. And Isaiah purposefully writes it. And then he prays and basically confesses what he knows as his sins. And interestingly enough, he used to rule before that, I believe, 14 years, and then God will add him another 15 years. So he goes through this transformative experience. Now, king goes through death and resurrection experience, then first of all, he and his people can live, can be alive. Does that remind you anything? Ring the bell? Okay? Jesus goes through death and resurrection experience. Therefore, the body of Christ, those who belong to him, can be alive. Okay? That's the whole thing. That's why when we say those words, comfort my people, we can read them in a historical sense. That's what happened there. And with all the prediction about Babylonian captivity, that's kind of in the future, but they know that they are in that stage of actually recovery. And even exile experience, the 70 years in Babylon, should be more taken more positively as another wilderness experience. And the wilderness experience for some ended with death, but some made through the wilderness into the promised land. Okay? So that's important. That's why when we read further, okay? So speak tenderly to Jerusalem and cry to her that her warfare is ended. Okay? And the warfare with who? On one hand is Assyrians. On the other hand is actually their rebellion against God. So God ends the war because he says, I'm not fighting with Jerusalem anymore, and I'm going to restore it. And the voice cries, okay? Starting with verse 3 is what we have in our marked text for today. And, okay, I have in my ESV, it doesn't sound really right. Okay, that's an important thing. Okay, verse 3 in my text looks like this. Sorry. Yeah, voice Christ. Something like that. No? Yes. Christ. In the wilderness prepared. Okay? Okay, cool. There is a serious problem for interpreters. Where to place in the wilderness? So, is it a voice cries in the wilderness prepare the way, or a voice cries in the wilderness prepare the way?
That's a
Okay?
strange translation.
It's what?
That's a strange. Well, it's. Never mind.
No, just say it.
It's a very strange translation. I mean, I've got like 5 different, translations on my digital, and none of them are
Doing
phrased
this
that way.
Yeah.
It's like that, but the way that the ESV has it is cry, in the wilderness.
See,
That's
what I have here is voice cries. In the wilderness, prepare the way.
Yeah,
Okay.
All the rest of them say a voice cries in the wildernerness. Prepare.
Yes, yeah, and that's a better thing.
Yeah.
Most likely, okay.
Voice cries. Never ever seen it that way.
That's a decision that should be done by an interpreter or by any one of you who are readers. Because in Hebrew text, you just have a bunch of words. And basically no punctuation. So wherever you move it, that's your choice. But, okay, from my point, and I agree with those who think that way, that the voice cries in the wilderness, and then the message of the voice is prepare the way. Okay? Why we are in the wilderness? Again, we are in the wilderness because, okay, and he brings this wilderness experience as Exodus story. Okay? What were we doing in the wilderness for 40 years? We moved from Egypt, but we did not immediately ended up in the promised land. I mean, God is a God of miracles. I mean, if he separated the sea in the way that they could just march through, theoretically, he could send a bunch of flying carpets from Aladdin cartoon and, just land them right there. I don't know how he would do it. He could have. But he made them purposefully to go through wilderness experience. And we've talked about that a few weeks ago, that, remember that this reading from Deuteronomy from chapter 8. So you were going through the wilderness and your food didn't swallow, you had everything fine with your clothing, and God will feeding you, and so on and so forth. Okay? there is always the period of preparation. When you decided to build a house, until the point you enter into the house, there is always a period of preparation, your construction or preparation in the school. You enter into the class, and surprisingly, same evening or even next morning, they do not give you your diploma paper. You know, you need to go through a set of quizzes, tests, exams, finals, and final. Yeah, that's a bummer. I understand. I understand. But they don't. I mean, and now think about that. The more challenges you go through, actually, the more, how can I say, the more stronger you become. What I'm going to is you treasure that diploma paper more.
The more valuable it gets.
It's more, thank you, I was looking for the word, I just got blank. It's more valuable to you, and actually, when you present it to us, see, I have it from that university, and we had those, like, bad guys. I mean, they were trying to fail us, but I win. You know, I did good. I aced it, everything. And people were like, yeah, that's cool. You know, it's not some kind of, 2 years of city college stuff. It's, it's a Harvard or, Princeton or whatever thing, or Cal State LA or Cal Poly if we are here.